I've been thinking about an interesting question recently. Where does politics start for you? It always starts somewhere for someone. There's a pivotal moment that captivates your eye, and with it, it makes you realize the nature of what has been presented to you was nothing more than a carefully crafted facade. And this is something that I realized at a very young age. And why is that? It's because I believed Barack Obama. I believed the lies. I actually thought he was going to pull all of the troops out and bring them home. I thought he was going to close Guantanamo Bay. I was just a child and I knew absolutely nothing, and with it, I was captivated by the nature of how beautifully he speaks. Barack Obama, one of the most talented orators of our generation, and with it, we can see this is one of the reasons he was elected to the role of president, because of how charismatic he is and how charismatic of a speaker he is. Man, when I realized what had happened, I was sitting in class and I was just scrolling through Facebook. I was on my phone, wasn't supposed to be. I was done with my work in economics, and I just see an article. Barack Obama signs off on drone strike, kills multiple people, injures multiple innocents. What was I supposed to do? All I did was freeze. I didn't know what to think because I realized the fact that, oh my gosh, he's just like the last, just like every single one of them. And much like how the dominoes fell when I realized the nature of the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and the Easter Bunny, right as I found out about one, I realized every single one of them was not what I was told. Quite a fascinating thing to come to because the understanding that hit me was like a lightning bolt. It was truly a eureka moment. It's like, oh my goodness, every single one of these people are liars. And with it, I'm sitting in a classroom full of kids, the age of which those just died from this airstrike. It could have been me if I was simply someone on the other side of the planet. And when I understood this, I realized, oh my gosh, they truly don't value human life. And the whole reason that I thought Barack Obama mattered was because I thought he valued human life. I thought he wanted to bring the troops home. But no, it turns out none of them care. And with it, we had the opportunity to elect the greatest president that there never was in Ron Paul, and so many people dropped the ball and completely abandoned that because they weren't activated by that of what is now the America First mindset. Ron Paul being the pioneer of this mentality, and with it, the thing that truly captured me was seeing what happened with Occupy Wall Street, seeing Ron Paul's what if speech. During the time of Occupy Wall Street, well, basically after the financial collapse, I was very lucky. My family, we weren't rich. We weren't even very well off, but we were fine. We were okay and we were able to maintain. I was a kid and I didn't understand any of it. But what I did see was my friends stealing ketchup packets from the school, hoarding food that they would get from the school's free lunch, and I didn't understand any of it. Went over to a friend's house one day, and what were they doing with the ketchup packets itself? They were using it and mixing it in with tomato soup so that they could have grilled cheese for dinner. Because this is how much the economy had tanked, and I didn't understand any of it. And after this, after thinking about things like this and realizing how well off I was as a child and how lucky I was, I then found Ron Paul's what if speech, and it lit a fire in me. And that is something that I'm going to go ahead and play now. Ron Paul's what if speech is undoubtedly one of the greatest pieces of media in the entirety of the political landscape, because I just don't think it could be more important to understand the value with which the words that this man says brings, because so many people have now truly come to understand the nature of why it's so important to be anti-war, why it's so important to be non-interventionist, because we cannot allow these innocent children to come to death and deprivation solely based on the standards of what the military-industrial complex wants. I'm sick and tired of seeing this over and over and over again, and with that, it's one of the things that had me thinking, where is it that politics starts for you? Let's go ahead and throw this into Ron Paul.
Madam Speaker, I have a few questions for my colleagues. What if our foreign policy of the past century is deeply flawed and has not served our national security interests? What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat is a predictable consequence of our meddling in the affairs of others and has nothing to do with us being free and prosperous? What if propping up repressive regimes in the Middle East endangers both the United States and Israel? What if occupying countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and bombing Pakistan is directly related to the hatred directed toward us? What if someday it dawns on us that losing over 5,000 American military personnel in the Middle East since 9/11 is not a fair trade-off for the loss of nearly 3,000 American citizens, no matter how many Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghan people are killed or displaced. What if we finally decide that torture, even if called enhanced interrogation technique, is self-destructive and produces no useful information, and that contracting it out to a third world nation is just as evil? What if it is finally realized that war and military spending is always destructive to the economy? What if all wartime spending is paid for through the deceitful and evil process of inflating and borrowing? What if we finally see that wartime conditions always undermine personal liberty? What if conservatives who preach small government wake up and realize that our interventionist foreign policy provides the greatest incentive to expand the government? What if conservatives understood once again that their only logical position is to reject military intervention and managing an empire throughout the world? What if the American people woke up and understood that the official reasons for going to war are almost always based on lies and promoted by war propaganda in order to serve special interests? What if we as a nation came to realize that the quest for empire eventually destroys all great nations? What if Obama has no intention of leaving Iraq? What if a military draft is being planned for the wars that will spread if our foreign policy is not changed? What if the American people learn the truth, that our foreign policy has nothing to do with national security, that it never changes from one administration to the next? What if war and preparation for war is a racket serving the special interests? What if President Obama is completely wrong about Afghanistan and turns out worse than Iraq and Vietnam put together? What if Christianity actually teaches peace and not preventive wars of aggression? What if diplomacy is found to be superior to bombs and bribes in protecting America? What happens if my concerns are completely unfounded? Nothing. But what happens if my concerns are justified and ignored? Nothing good.
There are few things that activate me like Ron Paul's what if speech, and that is what made me think of the question, where does it start for you? Go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below where politics started for you. What was it that made you look into it? Were there things that built up slowly over time that you had then realized where government was encroaching on your life, and that is what made you pay attention to politics? There are many different avenues that people take to take their foray into the political landscape. Go ahead and let me know down below. I'm very curious whether you agree with me or disagree with me on politics. I realistically don't care. I'm just curious about the mindset that brings people to the thought process that they now use. Let's go ahead and get into this article. Obama's final drone strike data. As Donald Trump assumes office today, he inherited a targeted killing program that has been the cornerstone of U.S. counterterrorism strategy over the past 8 years. On January 23, 2009, just 3 days into his presidency, President Obama authorized his first kinetic military action, 2 drone strikes 3 hours apart in Waziristan, Pakistan, that killed as many as 20 civilians. 2 terms and 540 strikes later, Obama leaves the White House after having vastly expanded and normalized the use of drones for counterterrorism and close air support operations in non-battlefield settings, namely Yemen, Pakistan, and Somalia. So here we see 2 terms and 540 strikes later, how many civilians? That's a good question. If you'd like to know that, go ahead and go past what I go through in this article so you can go ahead and look at the Council on Foreign Relations' own data on this. Throughout his presidency, I have written often about Obama's legacy as a drone president, including reports on how the United States could reform drone strike policy, what were the benefits of transferring CIA strikes to the Pentagon with Sarah Krebs, how to limit armed drone proliferation. President Obama deserves credit for even acknowledging the existence of the targeted killing program, something his predecessors did not do, and for increasing transparency into the internal process that purportedly guided the authorization of drone strikes. However, many needed reforms were left undone in large part because there was zero pressure from congressional members who, with few exceptions, were the biggest cheerleaders of drone strikes. On the first day of the Trump administration, it is too early to tell what changes he could implement. And Donald Trump did not implement any necessary changes to reduce this. He only had it ramp up in size and scale, and with it, it got worse. Well, something we have to address here that I find so fascinating. It says President Obama deserves credit for even acknowledging the existence of the targeted killing program. It's like, because the internet had pressured him. There was now mass proliferation of free access to information online, and with that, it was a way for people to defy the establishment narrative. And that is what led to things like President Obama having to openly address these things to the public. Now we go over here. Barack Obama is a war criminal. Yeah, just like every single other president. Let's get into it. In 2009, the Norwegian Nobel Committee decided that Nobel Peace Prize winner would go to Harvard Law School graduate and elected junior senator of Illinois, the first black president of the United States, Barack Obama. According to the committee, Obama's vision and hard work for a world without nuclear weapons served as the driving force that awarded him the Nobel. However, President Obama would go on to approve more drone strikes in his first year in office than President Bush carried out in his entire administration. The alleged peacemaker, very much like his predecessors, should be considered for the label of international war criminal, just like every single other president. Let's clarify. President Obama is not a pioneer of the illegal and offensive wars that the United States has engaged in over the last 20 years. Even still, he is an expansionist, reflected clearly in the development of his drone program. During his presidency, Obama approved the use of 563 drone strikes that killed approximately 3,797 people. In fact, Obama authorized 54 drone strikes alone in Pakistan during his first year in office. One of the first CIA strikes under President Obama was at a funeral, murdering as many as 41 Pakistani civilians. The following year, Obama led 128 CIA drone strikes in Pakistan that killed at least 89 civilians. Just 2 years into his presidency, it was clear that the hope that President Obama offered during his 2008 campaign could not escape U.S. imperialism. And that's what happened. It was a shot to the heart for me, and with it, I realized immediately, right as he dropped a bomb within the first couple days of his presidency, all of the things that he had been pushing was a lie. What do we have here? The drone operations extended to Somalia and Yemen in 2010 and 2011, resulting in more destructive results. President Obama's first strike on Yemen killed 55 people, including 21 children, 10 of which were under the age of 5. Additionally, 12 women, 5 of them pregnant, were also among those murdered in this strike. These blunderous acts of murder, not only by President Obama, but by the U.S. government, are morally reprehensible. Even more civilian casualties came out of Afghanistan throughout Barack Obama's time in office. In 2014, Obama began removing troops currently deployed in the country. However, instead of this action by the president being one in pursuit of peace and stability for the region, it only acted as an opportunity to drastically increase air warfare. Afghanistan had rained upon them by U.S. bombardment, with the administration viciously dropping 1,337 weapons on Afghanistan in 2016. In total that year, the Obama administration dropped 26,171 bombs, drone or otherwise, across 7 countries: Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. The U.S., in cooperation with its allies, including the Afghan government, killed 582 civilians on average annually from 2007 to 2016. And then people will go out and sit there and say, well, you'd have to understand, the only real scandal Obama had in his presidency was that he wore a tan suit. Really? Is that the case? Is that actually so? That's just unbelievable. And this became a meme to the point where there was actually a clip of Barack Obama where he goes to dip a cookie into a cup of milk and he can't get it in because the cookie is too big and the milk is sitting there in a small cup and he's wearing a tan suit while doing it. And he just goes, "Thanks, Obama." Yeah, that's the nature of the jokes they're willing to make when they rule over the death of how many innocent people? How many pregnant women have to die before these people are realized to be the war criminals and scum that they are? You know what? Let's go ahead and throw it into that clip of Barack Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
Okay, I was wrong. Obama was not wearing a tan suit, but that was made by BuzzFeed, so it's perfectly understandable why there wasn't any bit of depth that could have had multiple layers to the comedy behind it, because these people are brainlets and they don't even understand what's funny. That's just the nature of the political class and the journalist hacks. That's just how they are. They're basically not even people at this point. We go here. Now we have an article from The Guardian that I thought was genuinely fascinating just because it highlights something that's incredibly important. And it also points to the fact that something we're going to be jumping into, which is that Trump didn't actually stop this. For all of the people that wanted Trump to be this anti-war president, while he didn't start any new wars, he certainly didn't end any. What we can see is while we had the pullout from Afghanistan, and that is nice, it was his deep state and the intelligence apparatus that screwed him over on the timeline for this. But what we have to understand is that Trump still didn't end any of these wars. He still continued to fund them. And with it, we can see what happened in Saudi Arabia, because we were sitting there as Obama wanted to do and intended, as Trump continued to do, which was to, and I quote, placate the Saudis. We continued to fund their war of genocide against Yemen. What do we have here, though? From The Guardian, America dropped 26,171 bombs in 2016. What a bloody end to Obama's reign. Yeah, an absolutely horrific one. In 2016 alone, how many innocent people died in these air raids? Now we go over here. Interview, victim of Obama's first drone strike. I'm the living example of what drones are. Fahim Qureshi, I don't know if I pronounced that, was 14 when a drone attack on his home left him with horrific injuries, several family members dead, and his dream for the future in tatters. So for those that are unaware, there is a horrific article called Living Under Drones. And in it, it goes in detail, and it's very long. And if you want to actually have something that's quite morose, but it will explain to you the nature of what is happening, and in vivid and excruciating detail. Well, it lets you know that the children of Pakistan during Obama's drone war, the thing that they feared more than anything was that of a clear blue sky, because it was when the skies were clear and they could see that of the sun and they could feel its rays beating down upon them and they could see the beauty of the blue in the air. Well, that's when the sky robots fell. And that's when everything that they knew came torn asunder, and they were blown to bits, and with it their family members were taken from them, or they were taken from their family members. This is a horrific fact that many people in the corporate press don't want to address because, well, it's Obama. You have to understand, his biggest controversy was that he wore a tan suit. It wasn't the fact that there were 26,171 bombs dropped by his administration in the last year alone. No, it's the fact that he did something like wear a tan suit. Now we go over here. Trump inherited the drone war but ditched accountability. Only a single formal check remains on U.S. killings worldwide. Every single article will be in the link in the description down below, so you can go check them out in your own time. Well worth it. I would say, if anything that I can recommend, it will 100% be Living Under Drones. That is the biggest fact that I would want to point anyone towards. And with it, it's obviously, I would argue, one of the most horrific, but undoubtedly one of the longest reads. So if you don't feel like going through it, I understand that. But what you have to realize is, these are the things you're going to have to jump into. White papers and incredibly long documents if you really want to understand the nuance of what's going on with this stuff. And thankfully, there are people who are far smarter than I who have gone through many of these things, and I can go through them, and then I can see what people who are incredibly brilliant have gleaned from these things, and I can use their insights to assist and bolster my own. But my goodness, is it well worth your time to go ahead and see the things that have happened to these poor people on the other side of the planet? Now we go here. Trump revokes Obama's rule on reporting drone strike deaths. Isn't that just something? And this is why I hate when people are like, well, Donald Trump's anti-war. Donald Trump was going to end all the wars. Donald Trump didn't start any new wars. Look at what he did with the Abraham Accords. It's like, yes, while that is something to be commended, he still allowed for endless funding and with it, the proliferation of the drone program. President Donald Trump has revoked a policy set by his predecessors requiring U.S. intelligence officials to publish the number of civilians killed in drone strikes outside of war zones. In 2016, the executive order was brought in by then-President Barack Obama, who was under pressure to be more transparent. Since the 9/11 terror attack, drone strikes have been increasingly used against terror and military targets. The order applied to the CIA, which was carrying out drone strikes in countries such as Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Somalia. What was the rule? It required the head of the CIA to release annual summaries of U.S. drone strikes and assess how many died as a result. Mr. Trump's executive order does not overturn reporting requirements on civilian deaths set for the military by Congress. There have been 2,243 drone strikes in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, compared with 1,878 in Mr. Obama's 8 years in office, according to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, a UK-based think tank. An uptick in deaths. Human rights activists complained about the drone program under Obama's administration, saying the operations were overly secretive and hid the fact that civilians were sometimes killed in the strikes. President Obama responded by saying that the strikes were carried out in a precise manner. Okay, we have to cover something just because every single time they always talk about these airstrikes, doesn't matter who's in charge in government, they always talk about the fact that, well, this was a precision strike. Does the death of 55 people, including 21 children, 10 of which under the age of 5, 12 of the women that died being pregnant, sound like a precision airstrike to you? No, it sounds like exactly the opposite, in fact. But it doesn't matter, they'll consistently use this exact same rhetoric to try and act like they aren't absolute demons willing to sit there thirsting over the blood of innocent people. And now we go here. Hidden Pentagon records reveal patterns of failure in deadly airstrikes. This is incredibly long. If you want to go through it, please go ahead. And now we go over here. Living under drones. And this is absolutely mortifying. Both of these stories are tragic. If you want a long read, something that's very detailed, go ahead and jump into both of them. I cannot recommend it enough. And we go here to see that Biden can reduce civilian casualties during U.S. drone strikes. Here's how. Well, do you think Biden's actually going to do it? I'll give you a better question. Do you think Joe Biden even understands the fact that there are bombs being dropped on other countries? Because he doesn't even understand what's going on when he's on stage giving a speech. He's reading off the parameters surrounding what he's supposed to be saying on his cue cards, saying, in speech, say goodbye, walk off stage left. He's literally reading these things. Do you think Joe Biden understands anything about what's going on with the minutia of U.S. foreign policy? No, of course not. He was an idiot before Alzheimer's and dementia had completely overtaken his brain. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. We'll see the numbers that come after the Biden administration's first year, but man, I can't say I expect it to be any better. And shame on Donald Trump for making it so these numbers could be hidden and then ramping them up in kind. And I wonder if this is the fact that Trump had been completely famoosed by his deep state, and with it, we saw what happened by them keeping troops in Syria. They lied to him consistently about whether it was the troop count total or the fact of how many people they were even willing to pull out. And with that, it led to the death of many U.S. troops. And that is only something that is going to be on someone like Donald Trump's hands. And people who are consistently in Trump's camp will never hold him accountable for this, and they never want to mention it. But here's the deal. If Trump really is the man, your front runner that you want to be at the actual precipice of politics, then you need to be honest with yourself about what that means, what that's going to lead to in the future. Because Donald Trump signing off on something that removes information from the public's ability to understand the nature of the pervasive issues that the government consistently controls with the most Machiavellian of intentions, and doing so in the most despotic of ways by dropping sky robots on children and obliterating them and killing innocent people and blowing pregnant women to bits. Well, maybe you should realize that these people all cannot be trusted, because this is simply the nature of what happens with power and government corruption. Everyone ends up with blood on their hands. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, tell someone you love them. Peace out.